What is up, guys, and welcome to my review of episode 5 of The Last of Us, titled Endure and Survive, a title that comes from the little comic books that you actually can collect in the video game, but they're in this episode where Ellie is kind of bonding with Sam over that same exact comic book. And this week is essentially part 2 of last week. Episode 4 and 5 are essentially one story, one set of characters, one series of events that was split into 2. And so for a lot of people that thought that maybe episode 4 was a little slower, a little bit more setup, not as much pop on screen, this is all of the payoff. This is where all of the pop is going to come from. And this is absolutely one of the more exciting episodes, one of the more explosive episodes, one of the more action-packed episodes. And if you're somebody that isn't as much of a fan of the character moments, the slower moments, the drama, and you just want zombie action, probably not the show for you. I'll go ahead and warn you now, but this is your episode. This is the one where everything is coming out. And so the episode starts and we have Kathleen interrogating all of these Fedra collaborators, trying to find information on Henry, and just orders that all of them get slaughtered, furthering the whole kind of characterization of this character to where she does not give a fuck. If you are somebody that is standing in the way of what she wants, you're dead. And again, really efficient at kind of building up this character who is exclusive to the show, that was created for the show, as a genuine threat to not only Henry and Sam, but also to Joel and Ellie, or society as we know it. You know, Fedra is a little bit of a complicated issue, but I don't think the hunters necessarily have the right answer either. And we finally get introduced to Henry and Sam. Henry being the character that was hinted at in the previous episode, where Kathleen is looking for him for something that he did that led to her brother's death. Those of us that played the video game know Henry and Sam obviously knew that they were coming. Certainly one of the more emotional, shocking segments of the original game. And I love the way that they are portrayed in the show. And you have an actor who is a deaf actor portraying Sam. That is something that's different, but it kind of adds to the tragedy, if anything else. It kind of makes that character even more sympathetic, even more of a character that you get that pit in the middle of your stomach when you get to the events that this episode closes on. But really well portrayed characters, a very, very sad, tragic, dramatic storyline that the acting completely hinges upon to be able to get that same impact that we had in the video game when we got to the end of that chapter and was just broken. And I liked how you get to see Henry's perspective of the events of the last episode. You get to see the whole raid on Ellie and Joel's truck, and get to see Joel and Ellie take out the raiders, the hunters, and that kind of leads him to be intrigued and wanting to team up with them to help get him out of Kansas City, because he knows at some point Kathleen or somebody is going to find him and his brother is dead. And essentially he's just trying to get his brother safe. He's just trying to keep Sam safe. Doesn't necessarily care what happens to him as long as Sam is safe. And so you have these two groups, that you have this adult taking care of this younger kid that can't necessarily protect themselves. And so there's this instant bond, well, not instant necessarily. There is a eventual bond between Joel and Henry over their very similar goals, their very similar journey in this post-apocalyptic world. At first, it wasn't necessarily an instant bond. I like the way that Joel is portrayed as this guy that doesn't quite understand social interaction as well anymore. He's so hardened that he can't help but be hardened. And so you have Henry trying to be like, hey, if we put our guns down, you're not gonna kill us, right? You're gonna listen to us, you're gonna hear us out. And then Joel just looks at him and is just like, yeah. The way you said that does not ease my mind whatsoever. And then even Ellie kind of jumping into it, like, fuck, man, come on, like, talk to him like a human. And so once they get past that, once they realize that, okay, we're not a danger to each other, Henry proposes this plan, saying that, hey, I've seen you fuck up all these dudes, and I'm in a situation where I got to get me and my brother out of here, and I want you to escort us through these underground tunnels. These tunnels underneath Kansas City that, were supposedly filled with infected, but Henry has information that he believes is solid info that the infected were cleared out of them a long time ago. And so they do eventually set forth on this plan, although Joel doesn't quite buy it. And another moment that was such great fan service that admittedly I wish they would have expanded on a bit. This is the first episode where there are some genuine gripes that I have just as a fan, where I felt like there was a little missed opportunity. But nonetheless, you have this underground community that they stumble upon, to where there's this door and there's these castles that's drawn over the door and a design with chalk. And as they enter, they're looking around and they eventually see this little drawing, this kid's drawing on the wall of this person named Ish. And it's like a stick figure with some kind of a body armor on it. And there is an optional storyline that you can kind of discover in The Last of Us, in the Pittsburgh chapter that is, based off of this chapter of this show, to where you go and you find all these little notes. One of them's outside in a boat, which is Ish's boat. He was a guy that when the pandemic started, when the outbreak started, he spent a lot of time out at sea. And when he couldn't last out at sea anymore, he came to the shore, started up his own little bunker inside of this sewer, and eventually found this couple that had children that he traded with, and then eventually welcomed them into the sewer and created this thriving community in this barricaded sewer, which is where you get the school, you get the little chalk drawings from kids. They kind of basically walled themselves off from the world and survived in these sewers. And as you kind of progress through the sewers, you find more and more notes. Eventually you get to a note that basically says that somebody accidentally left a door open, a horde came in and fucking killed everybody with the exception of Ish and a couple people, and they left and barricaded the door that you don't find until you get to the very end that says, stay out, infected inside. And so that is a storyline that is completely missable, completely optional in the video game, but they give that nice little wink and nod to there. And I gotta be honest, I do wish they would have at least had a cold open with that. Ish is absolutely a storyline that I wanted to see some live action version of. I wanted to see something beyond written text. And so, just selfishly, as a fan of this video game, that was one missed opportunity in this episode that I kind of wish they would have explored more. It still charmed my heart that they had just the picture of Ish there and they had the chalk drawings. They actually did all of that. Again, just continuing to be really grateful that Neil Druckmann is on staff with this and putting these little moments in here that could be meaningless to everybody else but the diehard fans. But I do wish I could have seen a little bit more of it. And so Sam and Ellie start to bond over that comic book. Then you get the actual Sane, Endure, and Survive. That becomes the title of this episode and kind of is the theme of most of the story, to be honest with you, just endure and survive. A very multiple meanings there with that. And they kind of chill out in the sewers for a little bit. And this is where Joel and Henry start to really bond and kind of understand each other more and realize they're very similar with their goals. And so some really nice, quieter character moments there before the crazier events in the back part of the episode. And then you also get the full explanation of what exactly the issue is between Kathleen and Henry, to where Sam apparently had a form of leukemia and Henry was trying to find the medicine that he needed to keep his brother healthy, keep his brother alive. And the only way that he could get the medication that he needed was by trading information that eventually led to the death of Kathleen's brother, who he also says is a guy that's like one of the best dudes ever, like didn't deserve anything bad happening to him. So just creates another very complicated scenario there, which that moral ambiguity is just something that The Last of Us is bathed in, especially the second game and that storyline. So having Henry where he's trying to do whatever he can to keep his, young child brother alive, that eventually leads to the death of this man that, for all the information we have, was innocent and didn't deserve it. You understand why Kathleen has a little bit of that bloodlust. You understand why Henry had to do what he had to do. There's not really a good guy, a bad guy, a right or a wrong in that scenario. It's just events that led to something very tragic. And so it's a really interesting explanation because it's not so cut and dry of he did something fucked up and he kind of deserves it, or Kathleen's just an asshole and she has no idea and she's just blinded by the fact that it was her blood that eventually fell this bad fate. And I even like the scene that we get with Kathleen where she starts to talk about her brother and starts to talk about the fact that, kind of reinforcing that he was a really genuinely good guy. He had a moral compass. He was somebody that didn't probably deserve to die. And says that her brother would want her to forgive Henry. Her brother would want her to move on and to accept things and not create more bloodshed. And pretty much the fact that she says, I understand that. I understand that my brother would want me to do this, but I'm not, or I can't. It's just not going to happen. Another nice layer to that character, to where she has full spectrum of realization of the situation. She has a full self-awareness, has a full awareness of the moral ambiguity of everything going on, but just knows in her heart, she cannot make the morally good choice. She has to get that revenge. It's all that she exists for now. Which is another element of The Last of Us that is a continuing running theme that keeps popping up, which is in this world where it's just about survival, you can quickly be embodied by one thing, one goal, one drive. Some people it's to survive. Some people it's to, try, like with Bill, just protection. I just have to get everything protected, myself as well as my lover. Everything has to stay out. You have things like Kathleen, to where now she only exists for revenge. It's like nothing else in this world is worth fighting for. It's all gone to shit. I just need to get revenge. That's the only thing that's left for me in this world. And so another subtle but really important exploration of a theme of The Last of Us. And then we get into the just insane series of events that are drawn right out of the video game and certain gameplay aspects, and one that is just an entirely new segment, a new introduction, a reformed introduction of a form of infected. And so you get this segment to where there's this sniper.
Get out! Fucking sniper. Did you see where it came from?
Somewhere down the street. Right now, y'all stay here. Before you start, I need you guys to keep it. I'm gonna go around and see if I can't get the angle on him.
And they're taking aim and they're preventing Joel and Henry and Sam and Ellie from going forward. And that is a segment directly out of the video game where they have to take cover and you got to sneak through houses and make your way up to the sniper and beat the living shit out of him and kill him. And then as you get that threat out of the way, you look and all of the hunters and in the show, all of Kathleen's people have now descended upon them, and you've got to now use that sniper rifle that you were trying to avoid to protect the people that you were just trying to get out of the harm's way of the sniper rifle. So another awesome recreation of a segment of gameplay that gives you the same level of intensity that the game did. And then we finally get the reveal of what was in that sinkhole. And for many people that don't have the knowledge of the video games, hopefully this was a really badass reveal. Unfortunately, they gave it away in some of the marketing, so I understand they got to sell their show, they got to get people hyped, but that was a little disappointing for me. That could have been a really nice little image to have come out without trailers spoiling it. But for all of us that have played the video games, we are pretty sure what was in that sinkhole because we did not get introduced to the bloater in the Bill's Town segment. In the video game, on the last little rung of that chapter, you encounter the bloater in the gymnasium of this school, and that's your first time fighting it, your first time getting the lore of what that is. Essentially somebody that has been infected for so long that they've just turned into this gigantic hulking monster that actually throws like a poison little spores too. It throws like these little spore bombs at you. And so you get the sinkhole that emerges after Kathleen gets all of her people and has descended on Joel and everybody else. And you got clickers coming out, you got runners coming out, and then that bloater, man, just coming out. Just a fucking badass entrance. And I do prefer the way that they introduced the bloater in the show to the way that they introduced it in the game. Of course, it's awesome in the game too. It's one of the best segments of the game, Bill's Town, and that's one of the better parts of that entire chapter. But man, the introduction of that bloater was just so much more menacing, so much more badass the way that they did it here. I thought it was a really cool way to kind of shift that reveal to later on in the story. And I'm curious if all of those people was the Ish community. I'm curious if all of that infected was, the Horde, as well as the people that community befell with that Horde. And so another little element that would have been cool if they had shown, like, I don't know, a clicker gets killed or whatever, and after he's down, you could see like the name tag Ish or something. Again, selfishly, I wanted little things like that. It doesn't affect the episode that it's not there. Just these are moments where I thought, damn, those are moments that could have been really cool to expand on that little mini story there. And it's a totally chaotic bloodbath of a scene. You got a lot of different tension going on. You got everybody that came for Henry now turning their guns on this wall of infected. You've got the bloater just ripping through people like tissue paper. You've got Joel trying to use a sniper rifle to help Ellie and Henry and Sam. You got Ellie going into a car and a clicker going into the car after her and trying to escape. And then eventually Kathleen, right when it feels like they've gotten away, Kathleen corners them and a clicker takes her out. Maybe a little bit too easy. I mean, obviously this is a whole segment that's meant to, show the power of a Horde. Her ending could have been a little bit more impactful, I feel like, for as much time as we spent building up her character. But nonetheless, seeing her get ripped apart by a clicker, fine. All leading to the devastating note that the Henry and Sam storyline ends on, with now they have finally gotten out of this crazy situation. They have gotten out of Kansas City. They've gotten out of the tunnels. They got away from this horde of the infected. And Sam is bit. Sam is bit. And in the video game, you don't have this scene between him and Ellie to where he reveals to Ellie that he has been bit. And of course, obviously the other part of that where Ellie cuts her hand and tries to put her blood on the wound as if it's going to work that way. Childlike innocence, the sweet innocence that something like that might work, just the way that a child's brain works. Like, oh, come on, my blood's medicine. But it's absolutely tragic because of the way that he asks. What do you do about fear? What do you do when you're afraid? What are you most afraid of? And he says, I'm afraid of, when you turn into these monsters, do you lose who you were? To where you have this kid that's already kind of accepted the fact that he's done. His life is coming to an end here within hours. And then that whole explosion there, to where the next morning, Ellie walks over to Sam. Sam's already fully turned. Fight breaks out. Joel tries to get a gun to stop him. Henry shoots at Joel.
Sam?
The hell? Shit, he's turning! That's my fucking brother!
To keep him away from Sam, and then in a moment without hesitation, shoots his brother in the head to save Ellie, and doesn't even realize what he has done. And that the acting with Henry, whenever he looks at the situation, and once it gets quiet for a few seconds, and he's able to take a breath and realize what just happened, that the person that he has gone through absolute hell to protect, the one person in this world that he cared about, as soon as he feels like they've gotten that victory, it's taken from him, and Sam is done. Sam is infected, and now he just shot his brother in the head. Ugh. It might be the most emotionally devastating part of the game outside of the death of Joel's daughter in the opening scene. I mean, there's a lot of emotional moments, but that is one where it's just like, dude, what the fuck? Oh, that's so bad. And the way that Joel tries to get him to, all right, calm down, give me the gun, don't do it, and just immediately, pow, just nothing left to live for. Certainly doesn't want to live with the knowledge that he shot his brother in the head, even if he was not his brother anymore. And so just the emotional devastation of that scene is just, it's as impactful, if not a little bit more impactful than it always was in the game, which just it continued to give all of the credit in the world to the actors for that, because the way that Joel's daughter and Joel and their performances together in that first episode just really just ripped open that scar tissue of seeing that scene for the first time in 2013. This was the exact same experience. And the whole note that the episode leaves off on, where they bury Henry and Sam, and Ellie leaves on his little drawing pad that he communicates with, "I'm sorry," and leaves it on his grave. I'm almost getting teary-eyed talking about it right now. Like, it's just, if it wasn't devastating enough, that moment just absolutely wrecked me to where I'm like, oh my God, that is just, that's so emotional. And the way that the events of meeting Henry and especially Sam and seeing what happened completely rejuvenates and enhances her drive to get to where she has to go to get this cure done. She's somebody that's kind of been a little playful with it, a little reckless with it, not really taking it all that seriously. Like, yeah, whatever, I'm the savior of the universe. And it's this experience with Sam that breaks her and makes her go, I have to do this. If this is my purpose, I have to fulfill that purpose so that this never happens again. So powerful. And so this is an episode that it's one of the best episodes of the season. And I think that when some of the people that were more critical of episode 4, I think with all of the payoff in this episode, they might even like episode 4 even more now, because 4 and 5 really do go together as one story. Possibly the most action-packed episode of the season. So I loved all of that stuff, all the infected carnage, the introduction of the bloater. Henry and Sam acted to perfection. And aside from just my greediness as a diehard fan of wanting a little bit more of the Ish storyline, this is another episode of this show that I just think is absolute top notch. And in the emotional break that we had last week, like, okay, whew, we've gotten away from the emotional devastation of episode 1. We've gotten away from that really, really tragically beautiful episode 3. Okay, we're gonna take a breath for a moment, and then episode 5 is like, yeah, fuck your breath. Time to rip your heart out again. So this is what The Last of Us does, baby. Those of you that have not played the games and are experiencing this for the first time, welcome to the party, pal. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for the playlist of all of my coverage of this show so far. I'm also going to put my review of the recent remaster of the first video game. And tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have our live spoiler discussion too. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so you do not miss that. Like and share this video. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.